You're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson, episode 177. Hey there, you're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Henderson, and on this show, we talk about improving your business, life, or both by having amazing and rich conversations with brilliant guests who will inspire you and who will give you tips and tricks to help you grow both in life and in business. Well, hey there, amazing human, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ange, from Angela Henderson Consulting, where I'm an international award-winning business consultant and coach who has helped thousands of amazing women business owners to get all the pieces in place to have consistent four and five figure months, and then on to 6 and 7+ figure years without burning out in the process. So today is going to be a little bit of fun, a little bit behind the scenes with the amazing Solaine Douglas. You see, often as business owners, we start with a one-to-one business model, simply exchanging time for money. But more often than not, people realize that this isn't sustainable. It's leading to burnout and that hustle mentality. And that something needs to change in order to get their time back so they can live the life and business that they really want, to have a business and life that they are in true alignment with. On today's podcast, I'm excited to bring on one of my clients, Solaine, on the show to share with you how we moved her from a one-to-one business model to a one-to-many business model and increased her quarterly revenue by 29.2% after we brought in the one-to-many model. In addition, on this episode, Solaine will share with you what it's been like to work with me in the role of her business consultant, how I've helped her to gain the clarity she needs, took her from stuck to unstuck, increase her revenue, and so much more. This is, again, one of those behind the scenes episodes that so often I'm getting emails and DMs that people want the juiciness. So I really want to get into what it's like to move someone from a one-to-one model to a one-to-many model and show you how I don't do cookie cutter approaches as a business consultant. Because here's the thing, every business owner that comes to me brings to me so many different variables that I need to account for. Different businesses, different personalities, different home life, different dreams. And as their business consultant, it's up to me to find out how best to support them. And having that cookie cutter approach does not work. Let me repeat, it simply does not work. And that's why today I want to show with you what it's like when I work with clients, while at the same time educating you about the importance of not just doing a one-to-one model and how a one-to-many model can help you in so many ways other than just revenue increase. But before we hop into this episode, I want to let you know that something super exciting is happening on November 17th and November 18th. I'll be hosting my $37 live 2-hour strategy and goal setting workshop so that you can end 2021 with a bang and make 2022 your best year in business yet. During these live 2-hour sessions, you're going to be able to get access to my brain on your business and walk away with your 2022 strategy and goals mapped out. Not to mention, you get access to my 15-page strategy planner that I too use every single year in my business. Spots are limited, as I like to have the numbers really small in my groups to keep things intimate. So if you've been finally wanting to work with me, I encourage you to secure your spot to either the November 17th or 18th 2-hour strategy and goal setting session. It's going to be epic. And yes, the sessions will be recorded if you can't make it live. To secure your spot, because again, spots are limited, head simply to www.angelahenderson.com.au/business-strategy-sessions. Again, that URL to secure your spot to one of the 2-hour live strategy and goal planning workshop sessions is angelahenderson.com.au/business-strategy-sessions. Now let's get into this epic conversation about one-to-one and moving to a one-to-many model with Solaine. Welcome to the show, Solaine.
Thank you. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Yes, I am excited to have you here today. I mean, I was thinking before we hopped on the call together, I can't believe that it's almost been 11 months since, we started interacting with each other, and then you became one of my Profit Pillar clients, but it seems forever, but in a good way, right? It doesn't seem like it's just been 11 months.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's gone really quickly. I can't believe the time's almost up.
I know the time passes. And again, we've worked in other areas. You also came to my Women in Business retreat, which we'll talk about later on too, but 11 months A lot of people will think that that's a very long time, but in fact, it can be a very short time when you're busy, strategically taking action and working on things. And we'll talk more about that later. But one of the things that I like to always ask my guests when they come onto the podcast so that they get an opportunity to know you a little bit more. My question to you, very important question, are you team dog or are you team cat?
You just have to have a look at my Instagram to answer that. Definitely team dog. Definitely. I'm actually allergic to cats.
Okay. Yeah. Now, listen, you have a beautiful dog, and I knew that, but I thought it would be fun for listeners. Tell us a little bit about your dog. What type of dog is it, and how much joy does your dog bring to your world?
Oh, so much joy. She is just over 1. She's a Groodle, so a golden retriever cross poodle. And we're just obsessed with her. We really do treat her like our baby.
They bring so much. I mean, listen, they are hard work, though. I mean, I also, as you know, have a British Bulldog who I think we got around similar times. I mean, she's one too. But I tell you what, no one prepares you for that shit and craziness, from eating shit to the amount of money I've spent on toys because stuff just goes missing. Like I said, I said I would never be that dog mother, and I am that dog mother, right? It's like, oh, we'll get grateful another treat. Oh, we'll get grateful the Halloween costume. Oh, we'll get grateful the Christmas costume. I'm like, we're a hot mess when it comes to our dog but in a good way, right? Because it's just like every day you can be having a bad day, but there's this essence of just like that unconditional love that they bring to us. And you cannot not help yourself but smile, even when they do the cheekiest of things.
100%. 100%.
And what is the name of yours again? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Her name's Kubi, which my partner his background is Lebanese, and it's actually basically meatloaf in Lebanese.
That's awesome. It's so fun. Now that we know a little bit about Kubi, aka Meatloaf, and the fact that you are a team dog versus team cat, can you share with the listeners out there a little bit about your business journey? What were you doing prior to going full-time in your business, and what are you up to now?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a degree qualified nutritionist, and I do work one-to-one. Previous, I guess, to going full-time in my business, I was doing it part-time, and I was, kind of taking on any kind of client, anything, female, male. I was taking on anything from metabolic health right through to reproductive conditions, gut health, just general sort of weight loss and, accountability and that sort of thing. So really anything. And then in that process, especially I think once I went out on my own, I was seeing more clients then and really realized that the area I really thrived in was more the women's health and certainly more so the hormonal side of things. And whilst it's all interconnected, of course, your gut health is influenced by your hormones and your metabolism and so on and so forth. Usually people are coming to see you for a specific problem, right? They're not, they don't maybe realize that all those things are interconnected. And so in the last, 6 to 12 months, and certainly since I've been working with you, I've really just narrowed down into that focus of clinical work. And it's been amazing doing that. I really love it.
Fantastic. And so did you always work on your own, or were you also working for someone else?
Yeah, I was working for someone else previously, and then I've just gone out on my own since September last year. So really just over a year that I've been out on my own.
And what was the main thing that you no longer wanted to work for someone else, where you're like, you know what, maybe I should do this gig on my own?
It's a great question. I would, I think personality wise, I probably don't like being told what to do and how to do it. It's something that I've discovered about myself actually only recently, because I did collaborate with someone else, sort of in another side hustle type scenario. And in that process, I did really discover that, I guess, about my personality, that once I'd had the freedom and the space of running my own show, that I really didn't like having to share the big decisions, and I just wanted to do things how I wanted to do them. So I do think there's an element of that. And then the other thing is that when you're in a role like mine, if you're working for someone else, you generally don't have the freedom to actually specialize in a particular area of clinic. They'll obviously be having a percentage of the consultations that you're bringing in or that are being funneled through to you, and you will get any and every kind of client. And as a practitioner, it is quite difficult to be across everything as best as you want to be. And it's much, you can provide a much better service to people if you're able to just really narrow down and focus on getting excellence in specific areas, as opposed to taking on things that are sort of outside your scope of practice. So that's also a really big element, I think, of why I wanted to do things on my own, is that I'd identified that I really did want to narrow down in that specific women's health area.
And since narrowing down, aka niching, niche, depending on whoever the person would talk to, is obviously we'll also talk about the direct increase of revenue and how much your revenue has increased over the last 12 months and things like that. But would you also say that contributing to that revenue increase, that by you really honing in and focusing on what some of the things we had talked about when you were working with me around, niching down and being more around that hormone women specific, would you also say that it's a direct correlation with the type of people you're getting, but also the increase in that revenue?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it just goes back to, what's that saying? Like, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to no one. Did I get that right? Something like that. Anyway, basically, the way I think about it is, I guess what I was putting myself out there as before was the generalist. And now when people would come across my page, now I do get messages that are like, oh my God, that what you wrote or this is exactly what I'm experiencing. And I do think that then there's that, people come across you and go, yeah, you're my person. I need your help specifically.
And listen, though, I think that's important to realize for those listeners out there. I believe, how do I say this? There's a lot of people out there that are always like niche. Like, as soon as you come up with your business name and URL, they're like, you must niche. And I actually disagree with that component of it, because you've also demonstrated, and this is what I say often to people, is that your niche will evolve as you evolve, right? And if you niche too quickly, you potentially can screw yourself out of a business. And if you take too long to niche, you can also screw yourself out of a business and or growth opportunity, right? But just know that if you happen to be out there listening and you're like, oh, I've been working on this and it's not quite perfect, done is better than perfect. So for you, yes, you were taking on a whole bunch of other people, but you were still making money, you were still doing whatever. And as time got on and as you evolved and learned more, you were able to kind of draw that in. And I would suspect in 12 months from now, it will be even tighter, right? Because that's just typically that. So for those out there, just know that your niche will evolve. Don't freak out. You don't have to have all things figured out right now. As Marie Folio talks about, everything is figure outable, and niching is one of them. So don't beat yourself up if you don't have your niche down specifically, and if you don't have your ideal client down specifically. It will happen, just like Solaine has demonstrated today. And I see it happen all the time. I know when I first started consulting, because my first business was e-com specific, I predominantly saw, I think it was around 70% e-com clients, 30% service-based clients. And though I take quite a few one-on-one e-com clients, by the beginning of 2022, I pretty much will be saying no to any e-com clients in my programs, for example, because I've now been so infused with the service side of things that it's pretty much now probably 20% e-com, 80% service-based. So again, it's an evolution. It doesn't just happen overnight. You learn more, you grow more, etc. So be kind to yourselves when you're looking at narrowing down. So, now, for the listeners out there, I'd like for you to just explain a little bit about, and just share with them a little bit about how you decided to work with me. Like, how did you hear about me? What were some of the challenges you were facing at the time before you hired me as your consultant, etc.?
Yeah, so I knew at the end of last year, around, I would say, December time. So I'd left my full-time job in mid to late September, and I'd done then, 3 months or so on my own. And I got to December and I just felt like I was listening to all of the free content that's out there. And I think I was just more confused than anything else. And also feeling really overwhelmed, felt like I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember thinking, that a big piece of my issue was just the marketing, but I realize now that there was quite a few other things as well. So I just felt like I was working hard. I was hustling. I was spinning my wheels, but I wasn't really getting anywhere. And so I'd been listening to a few different marketing and business podcasts, and I actually hadn't come across yours yet, but of a couple of the people I was listening to, I had heard your name mentioned multiple times. And then I actually heard an interview with you specifically on the topic of what you call profit pillars, where you were going through all of those. And I guess the penny kind of dropped there, that I realized I didn't actually have any of those foundations you were talking about. And so instead of, I guess, looking to work with someone who was going to be ahead of those things, I felt like the foundational things were really what I needed at that time. And that then I came across your podcast and I listened to a lot of that. And then I ended up booking a discovery call with you in January this year.
Absolutely. And then the rest is history, right? We're 11 months later and look at us now, right? And so, yes, so understanding, you mentioned a key thing there about the foundations. I'm very big about foundations, and that analogy I always use is that of the three little pigs. You came to me with a business made out of pear sticks. It was there. You had a name, you had a website, right? But it wouldn't have taken much for the big bad wolf to come, AKA COVID or, illness or something. And that probably would have crumbled slightly, right? Potentially could have wobbled, and maybe had to go back to the, a 9-to-5 or working for someone else. So I have, foundations are key, because if we can build a solid business of bricks, even if COVID comes or illness comes, yes, you might decline in revenue for a little while, but you structurally will still be there. And again, securing yourself to not have to potentially go back to that 9-to-5. You can still kind of run your own race. It might just have to change and pivot for a little while. So thanks for sharing that. It's always good to know where people initially heard from me and what was kind of getting them over the fence, you could say. Now, speaking of that, what made you officially, though, take that massive jump? So obviously we did the discovery call, and again, you were like, yes, I think you said something like, I'll think about it. And I said, I'll send you the, the follow-up email is what I said. But what made you actually take the jump or the shift to investing in your business, but also just like hiring me, going, all right, I know there's a whole bunch of other programs out there, but this is the right one for me right now?
I picked you because I think anyone listening will probably agree that you're a very straight shooter, and I feel like you just say it how it is. And I didn't want anyone who was going to be, fluffy or nice. Not that you're not nice, but, who was going to be fluffy and that kind of thing. I wanted you to just tell me the cold, hard truth. And I just really liked that about you. I think I got that from listening to you through your podcast, and obviously the discovery call definitely confirmed that. And that's what I needed, and that's really what I wanted. Yes, that's sort of why I picked you. And then I guess in terms of investing, I mean, I think I don't know where I got this from, but I feel like I've always had the mindset of, if I can invest in something that's going to further my, personal development, my business development, then I would be an idiot not to do it, right? Because otherwise it's going to take me so much longer to figure that out on my own. And like I said, I had been going through the free content, and as I said, I was just more confused than anything else and didn't know how it applied to me and what things I specifically needed to focus on and in what order. So yeah, I had no issue with investing in that. I hadn't invested in anything specifically relating to, business coaching or anything like that before, but I had done I've spent, thousands of dollars in additional mentoring and things in terms of my clinical skills as a nutritionist. So I've never had an issue with doing that, because I feel like it always comes back in dividends.
Now, you mentioned something there that I want to touch upon. You said that you were obviously consuming the content, but you didn't know how it applied to you. Now, I do want to say I hear this often from women is, how are you going to be able to help me? How do I know it's not a cookie cutter approach, right? Like, how do I know that you're actually going to show up? So I'd love for you just to talk about, like, the strategy I give you. Was it generic? Was it cookie cutter? Or was it specific to you? And did you also feel like you've had access to me over the 12 months, or did you feel just like a number?
No, it's definitely specific. I mean, obviously there's the core modules inside of Profit Pillars, but we have the sort of it's not group coaching, but the hot seat sorts of calls each month. And in that, you're able to give us specific and tailored advice in that. So we obviously have the core foundations, and then you're really helping us to tweak that as to how it applies to our individual business. So I certainly never felt like it was generic or cookie cutter advice at all. No.
Yeah. And then there's also the daily support too. So that's the thing too, is some people think, oh, well, I only get to see you for one call or 2 calls a month or however. But there's actually multiple calls a month, but you get what I'm saying. And they think that it's only the calls that they can ask questions, but you can also ask questions any given day, Monday through Friday. And you're getting advice from me. You're not getting I don't have a team of coaches who are working from me. You're actually still getting access to my brain in between those calls too, to make sure that you're moving forward and not getting stuck.
Yeah, 100%.
Now let's talk strategy. When you first came to me, you were set on doing a one-to-one model. I was like, oh, she's not budging on this one. She's pretty adamant about this. And you were set that, and nope, because when we were talking about your goals and what you needed to do to improve revenue, and you're like, nope, I want to continue seeing 80 people a month. And I was like, 20 people a week. And you're like, yes. And so I had chatted with you about how you were potentially, or AKA you were exchanging time for money. So I just simply gently planted the seed. And that's often happens with the majority of people that I work with, is I just plant the seed. I've got to let it simmer. I got to water it a little bit more. I got to bring the sunlight, and eventually it kinds to come to bloom. But I gently planted the seed about, potentially one day you might want to look at moving to a one-to-many model. So you'll be able to have more impact to the people that you serve. You'll be able to make more money, and you'll potentially be able to get more freedom versus exchanging time for money. So I'm curious to know, when did the penny finally drop for you when you were like, oh, okay, now I get that I probably may not want to keep doing 80 clients a month?
I think it's probably when I actually started really increasing my client load and having bigger weeks, because at the time when I would have said that, I think I must have had about 40 or 50, around 40 or something clients a month. So, roughly 10 a week or so. And on bigger weeks, sometimes I'll see, 7 or 8 people in a day, 2 to 3 days a week. And I was exhausted if I was doing that 3 days. So if I was, seeing 7 people and doing 21 appointments, which has happened a few weeks, I would just be so drained at the end of it, and so mentally drained, because you're not just, it's obviously not physically demanding, but it's really mentally tiring doing things like that, especially when you're, analyzing test results, and also when you're helping people with their health. There's a certain degree of, I guess, mental and emotional load that you 100%. Take on from them as well. And that's probably also something I need to get better at, sort of channeling away from me at the end of the day, because I honestly would just feel like a shell of a person, and almost feel like the next day, especially depending on what time I would work until, that I couldn't start work at 9 o'clock the next day, because I would just need a moment to sort of offload my brain. So I think the penny dropped when I had a few weeks ongoing like that, and I thought, maybe my goal should actually be, I still love helping people one-on-one, and I do think there is certain people that will always need that one-on-one support, 100%. Because health is so nuanced that not everyone can necessarily go all the way in a group setting. However, I think my goal now has really transitioned to, how can I still have the one-on-ones, but how can I actually, have the minimum amount and still reach those revenue goals that I have. So definitely a big mindset shift around that. That's been huge for me this year. And I think also something you've definitely encouraged is thinking about how you actually want your business to be, not necessarily how everyone else is doing it, and whether that's actually in alignment with your personality, your values, all of those things. And thinking about that has definitely been a huge shift for me.
And it's funny you bring it up because I was having a big conversation the other day with a few people about this, is that there's the information we consume all the time is you must have a 7-figure business, 7 figures, 7 figures, 7 figures. I mean, it's like everywhere. And again, I don't want to be a hypocrite because I do help women hit 4 and 5 figure months and then on to 6 and 7 figure years. But again, that's very contingent on what they want, as you said, right? If you want 7 figures, great. But there's a lot of people who are like, you know what? I'm just happy with 150K, 200K a year. I want to be able to start, having a wedding, getting pregnant, doing whatever, or they may already have kids and they just really want to be there for the kids more often. Like, when has that no longer been allowed to be okay? Because I feel like there's all this pressure that it always has to be the 7 figures. So again, it's one of the core things that I try and, again, plant the seed for people at the very beginning is staying true to your values and always, whenever you're about to make a big decision in your business or whatever, is this in alignment with what I want to do and where I'm going? Because if it's not in alignment and you're just chasing the dollar, the energy is going to be different. You potentially will start resenting it. And then, it's no good and it will just weed itself out eventually anyways. So the alignment piece is so important. Now, when you started to shift though, from that 1-to-1, I guess now that you've started to shift and you're incorporating that 1-to-many model versus just the 1-to-1 model, what difference has this made in your life and within your business?
I think within my life, probably a big part of it is around confidence, I think, in my own skills as a practitioner, and also just the ability to teach that in a different way, because it's obviously quite different to teach and influence people in that group model versus 1-to-1. And I think I was quite nervous and anxious about being able to do that in a really effective way. But obviously now that I've done it a few times and had the feedback, I obviously can do it really effectively. So I think that's been huge. And there's definitely been increased revenue. So Q2 of this year, which would be when I brought in that first 3-week 1-to-many product, I had a 29.2% increase from Q1. So it was quite significant. And I think, it actually didn't feel as hard as I thought it would. I built up all these stories in my mind about how it was going to be really difficult and really hard. And, only maybe I wouldn't get anyone who would purchase and all of these things. And none of that actually happened.
But also remember too, we really stripped it back because initially we were talking and you're like, Ange, do I need a sales page? Do I need this? Do I need that? And I said, well, why can't we do it? Why can't we do it with ease? Right. And I said, well, you've got this really great product. You've already got an audience. People have been asking for it. Why don't we not do a sales page? Why don't we just throw it out there, see if people bite? And if people do bite, then maybe the next time we roll, then we'll add more copy, sales page, and tighten it. And you were kind of like, oh, I don't know exactly what you said, but you're like, oh, can we do that type scenario? And I said, yeah. I said, it always comes down to testing. Like, there's no one way. And that's what I'm saying is I don't like to do the cookie cutter. This is how it is. Because I could tell that we didn't, from a consulting point of view, is I don't want to put any more pressure, right? And overwhelm, because I knew it was so new to you, like moving into this 1-to-many model. So I was like, what can we do to just strip it back and make it easy? And we did that. We literally, emailed lists, threw it on social media. You did not have a sales page, right? You did not do that, but you still sold out all of the spots, correct? I just want to make sure I'm not messing that one up.
Yeah, I did sell out all of the spots that I wanted. And I think I only did maybe 1 or 2 social media posts and then 2 or 3 emails. And that was it. Then I created it after that.
Right. And that's what often people forget is people think that you have to have the sales page and all the funnels and all of this done. But if you've never validated a product yet, sometimes I'm like, well, why spend all the time, blood, sweat, and tears and money doing that until we validate products? So then once we validated, you sold out on that particular product. We were like, okay, great. If we want to scale this or run ads to it, we're going to really need a sales page for them to land to. So, and then slowly you've been building that, and so forth. So again, it doesn't always have to be hard. It doesn't always have to be one way. It's about adapting and seeing what works for those individuals. So again, revenue has increased, confidence has increased, but also your impact has changed, right? You're able to make more impact on other people's health because you're able to go to that 1-to-many model. So collectively in the last 11 months at time of recording, since you've worked with me, can you share with the audience 3 to 5 key things that you've accomplished since getting strategy and working with me? And I want to make this very clear. I say strategy and working with me, but as I say very clearly on my discovery calls with people, Solaine's success does not come down to Angela Henderson. Solaine's success, yes, I will show up and give strategy and accountability and all that, but it comes down to the actions or inactions that Solaine has taken. So it's actions. Like I said, if nobody takes action, well, then you're going to be the same spot than you are right now, a year from now. So again, I use the words loosely, strategy and working with me, because ultimately I was a component and I was just a vessel, you could say, but it was Solaine who actually went and took the whole 9 yards to get to where she's at. So what are those kind of 3 to 5 key things that you've accomplished in those last 11 months?
Well, definitely now having 2 one-to-many products and refining those. I'm just going to continue working on those. I definitely won't be making any more for a little while. I'll just be continuing to optimize. Can you share a little bit about
what those products are?
Yeah, definitely. So the initial one we spoke about is called the 21-day reboot. And that essentially is for people or women who have issues with energy. They feel like their metabolism's sluggish. Maybe they're finding it difficult to lose weight and they're just not really too sure where to start. So I'm really teaching all of the key pillars and foundations that you need. And you get meal plans each week, you get group support and also online learning modules. So that's really the foundational piece I think that everyone needs to learn. And then my other product is a 6-week program called the Hormone Repair Protocols. This is geared specifically to women with premenstrual syndrome and symptoms and, other hormonal imbalances, whether it be irregular cycle, or, complete absence of menstruation, those sorts of things. So that program is obviously longer and there is an element of group support and also able to add on one-on-one support as well. And that one is relaunching for the second time at the moment, which I've loved doing that one. So yeah, I'd say they're 2 of the biggest things. And then another huge thing would be my podcast that I started middle of this year. If you told me that time last year that I would have a podcast, I probably would have laughed at you. Yep. Honestly, I would have. And I think that as well has been a huge thing that's given me so much confidence in myself and my abilities. And the other incredible thing with that is, especially not that they've been released yet, but over the next month or so, I have 3 people in the health industry that are just, massive icons in Australia. Nearly everyone who's sort of, interested or intrigued in the women's health space would know these names. And I guess I just feel so humbled that they've said yes to me. And I think, you'd mentioned before when we were talking about the podcast that you'd be surprised who you can actually interact with and have these incredible conversations with. So that's sort of been, big pinch me kind of moments for me because, these are people whose books I've read and things like that. And so being able to have those one-on-one conversations and certainly being able to share them with my audience is very, very exciting to get that opportunity. And I wouldn't have that opportunity if it wasn't for having started a podcast. So that definitely, what are some other things? I mean, so many, obviously increase in revenue as well. And just that huge mindset shift around not sort of focusing on just building up my one-on-ones to the point where I have no capacity to do anything else in my business, but rather restructuring it in a way that I can still provide that one-on-one support to a smaller number of women, but also have other products in place that still allow me to really have a business that also allows me to show up 100% and not feel drained and like a shell of a person at the end of the week. So yeah, they would be the biggest elements for me.
Seriously, I mean, how good is that? Because one of the things that we talked about was around visibility. Yeah. And all businesses, in my opinion, one of the core foundations around that is visibility. And there's only, as I talk about often, 3 key ways to get visibility: organic, partnerships, and paid. And some of the strategies that we were looking at, I was like, yes, but what's the return on investment for you for putting your time and your energy into this? And I was like, but a podcast will allow you to be able to build your authority, build your credibility, build your audience, build your connections with people, etc. And you're like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, no, I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'm going to plant the seed. I'll plant it and I'll see what happens. And then you're like, all right, my podcast is happening. This is what we're doing. This is the name and it's launching. And I'm like, hell yes. Right. And I know just from watching already some of the people that you've had on there, like the beautiful conversations you're having, the connections that you're making. Again, you're extending that visibility while at the same time allowing people to consume your content every week and make a bigger impact for those that need to hear the information that you're giving them. So a huge congratulations on that, because yes, we may have talked about it, but it didn't come to flourish, to bloom without you taking the action, right? So huge congratulations on your podcast. And what's the name of your podcast? Do a drop so everyone knows.
It is Holistic Health Chats.
Dude, love it, love it, love it. Now, you mentioned something there too that I want to talk about. Obviously, yes, you've had your biggest year in business. And yes, you talked about strategy and support, but I'm so glad that you also mentioned the importance of mindset, because as you know, in Profit Pillars, for example, is I'm very big about, yes, I'll show up and give you strategy, but I also have a mindset coach that does monthly mindset work. We've got the intuitive spiritual person also that people are able to access. What other key elements besides the strategy, the support, and some of that mindset do you think that it's taken you to make this year happen the way it has? Like, is there anything else that we've missed with that?
So other than strategy and support and well, I think, yeah, as you mentioned, mindset definitely is a huge piece. I think I really underestimated how much that actually sort of made a difference, other than just sort of the 3D activities that you're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So that has been, pardon the pun, but a huge mindset shift for me, realizing how much of a difference that makes. And also just, how important it is to really like take care of that and prioritize that for your business as well. It might not seem, like something that's going to make a big difference, but it honestly does. And I think it transfers into then everything else that you're doing across that day or that week. So that's been really huge. And then I think as well, that's ongoing that I'm doing that, but also just really celebrating all the small wins. Like that's something you talk to us about doing all the time. And I'm getting better at doing that. I never used to. I'm definitely getting better at doing that. And also just getting better at, if I'm sitting down to look at my numbers for the end of the quarter or the end of the month or whatever it is, I take time to actually look back at how far I've come, in the last 3 months, the last 6 months, the last year, because it can be so easy, I think, to, as you said earlier, look at what other people are doing online or look at these people who are getting to the 7 figures or whatever it is, and have that feeling of whether it's conscious or subconscious, comparing yourself to where other people are at. And I've just tried so hard to stop doing that and just compare myself to myself a year ago or 6 months ago or 1 month ago, because that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Like it doesn't matter where other people are and what they're doing.
And I know I talked often too on different podcasts, like your chapter 1 is different to someone's chapter 30, right? Like just write your own chapter and run your own race course. Now, I also just want to emphasize or just ask what your thoughts are about how much, obviously we talked then about strategy, we talked about support, we talked about the mindset, but how big do you feel, or how much has community and having access to a community also, not just me, but community of other women in business, how much has community also potentially or not potentially influenced your growth over the last 12 months?
Yeah, definitely. It has. It's great. You post any kind of question in there and obviously you reply and answer that question and help us with that. But often other people are in there, either just showing support or answering that question or providing feedback or advice if they're equipped to do so. So that's been huge. And certainly, you connect with people outside the group as well. Like there's obviously another nutritionist in there, and her and I have been on each other's podcasts and become quite good friends. And you're also a great connector, I think, as well within the group. If you see that there's a way we can support each other, whether it's being on each other's podcasts or some other way, you're great at sort of pointing out how we can do that as well. So yeah, that definitely plays a role.
Yeah, I want to let people know that it's just not, you're not just paying to work with me. And a lot of people think, well, yes, of course I want direct access to me, which you get. But when you start to play bigger and you start to step up into the next levels, you never want to be reliant on one person. So that's why it's really important that I also nurture those and facilitate those other opportunities and community, because again, I never want people to stay with me forever, because if you stay with me forever, then I haven't done my job as a consultant, right? So again, I want you guys to have the tools and the resources to be able to facilitate other conversations with other people post that. So that's one side. And the other side is that connections, again, your network equals your net worth. So even if there's someone outside of the group, like I know I've connected you with one of my one-to-one clients, Robin, to come on each other's podcast too, is you're also paying to access my connections, right? And people forget about that when they sign up for me, or they don't even think that that's a component till they get in there. They're like, oh, now I see what Ange meant on the discovery call by saying you get access to my connections. Because if you think about Robin's podcast, for example, she's had 500,000 downloads on her podcast, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, again, you're new, but you still bring value on your podcast too, right? But it's like you guys are now cross-pollinating with each other's audiences. You both are increasing your visibility, but also you now have a long-term relationship. Who knows, whenever you could team up to do a giveaway together, run an event together, do a summit together. There's so many opportunities that come when you have connections, right? So again, I just wanted to explore what that looked like for you, because I think it's important that people don't realize it's not just me they're accessing. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, there's just a few more questions before we wrap up, but I would like also ask you if there's anything that you've experienced in working with me in the last year. Was there one particular favorite part that you liked more than others?
That's a great question. I think it would just be your overall sort of demeanor and no BS approach. I would say I just love it. I think that's very unique to you. And I love that you'll always just get us to think for ourselves, but at the same time, you've got that mix of, advice meets coaching. So you will provide advice, and when you do it, it's very straight to the point. There's no beating around the bush, which I love. But yeah, you do also have that element of coaching as well, where you're still sort of, asking us better questions than we're asking ourselves sometimes, which is definitely important.
Dude, I love it. I love it. And for those sitting on the fence, potentially going, yeah, maybe I want to work with, and not too sure, what are some encouraging words that you might give them if they're sitting on the fence?
I would just think about, you might be hesitant to invest in something like that for your business, but also think about what it will cost you if you don't. So if you don't, and like you resonated with my story, saying how I was just spinning my wheels and felt like I was consuming all this free content, but didn't know how to actually, piece it all together or what was even applicable for me. If you don't do anything, like, is that actually going to change? What's the cost of not doing it, and can you afford to not? You might think that you can't afford to invest in it, but can you afford to not, would be my question.
Dude, I love it. And like I always say, do you want to be in the same spot you are right now a year from now, right? Like, that makes me, I'm like, hell no, right? Hell no. Now, for those women listening to this particular episode who also might need help with their hormones, etc., how can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am most active on Instagram. I'm always happy for anyone to send me a message, ask me questions, and get connected that way. So my Instagram handle is Solaine Douglas _nutrition. Equally, you can go and listen to my podcast if you like, which is called Holistic Health Chats, or you're always welcome to find me via my website, which is solainedouglas.com.
Dude, I love it. I love it. And my last question to you, my friend, is what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started off in business?
Probably that I can create the business that I want, and that I can do it exactly how I want, not how everyone else is doing it. I think I didn't realize that at the start. And I really thought that I was just going to end up with a business that I had to do all of this one-on-one consulting work with. And that has been honestly the biggest mindset shift, I think, for me in the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, how cool is that? And also at time of recording, you just gotten back also having that freedom, right? A whole week touring around in like a camper van with the dog Meatloaf, right? Kubi, right? And just chilling, right? Like, and obviously your partner. But again, that may not have been an option if you were still doing that many one-to-one clients, right? Mm-hmm. So having that opportunity to launch one-to-many programs throughout the year and giving some of your freedom and flexibility yet back to is so powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Listen, well, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you over the last year. And I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience of what it's been like to work with me. Like I said, you are joyful, you are exceptional at what you do, and you have just continued to go from strength to strength. And I look forward to continuing to see you go from strength to strength and cheering you on, even when you're no longer a client of mine, because it's just been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. So thanks so much for that.
Thanks so much, Ange. I appreciate all the help and guidance you've given me over the last 12 months. And I really don't think I would be in this position now without your support.
Now, if you're listening to this episode going, wow, what an epic year Solaine has had, and you'd like to explore working with me, I would encourage you to come and join me for my $37 2-hour strategy and goal planning workshop, where I'm going to help you create your strategic plan for 2022. I'm offering 2 different time slots to accommodate those all over the world. And these 2-hour live strategy and goal planning strategic workshops will be held on November 17th or November 18th. During our live 2-hour small business strategy planning and goal setting workshop, I'm going to help you create a customized business strategy plan for your business and end 2021 with a bang and make 2022 your best year in business yet. All for only $37. For $37, you'll get access to me for 2 full hours and have me looking at your business. You'll walk away with a personalized plan, which will include us mapping out your business goals so you don't waste time on ideas that won't work. Get clear on your next steps so you're never overwhelmed and overthinking. Refine your to-do list. Goodbye, busy work. Get your plan on paper so that there's no question on what you're working on, and put your business on path to sustainable strategic growth so you can create the business and life you want. To access either the November 17th or the November 18th live 2-hour strategy and goal planning strategic workshop, head to angelahenderson.com.au/business-strategy-sessions, and you'll be able to choose which time slot is going to be applicable and work best for you, your family, and your business. And yes, these will be recorded if you cannot make the live session. Let's work together to create a customized plan to transfer your business and end 2021 with a bang and make 2022 your best year ever. Also, my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode at angelahenderson.com.au. And thanks again, Solaine, for being on the podcast today. I really, really appreciate it. And to you, amazing human, have a fabulous day. And I look forward to you joining me again next week for another amazing episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. Thanks for listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson. www.angelahenderson.com.au